One of the most controversial video games of this console generation is going on its 4th year of life, and surprisingly, it's getting another anniversary update absolutely free. Will this new No Man's Sky Origins update be the time for you to finally jump in? Or has Hello Games' Project Skyscraper Passion Project moved past the point of relevance? Find out right here in the LZ. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the LZ for this 4-year No Man's Sky Origins review. Today we're going to do a really simple format for today's critique of this update. We're going to talk through the pros and the cons of this update, and we'll sort of chapter that out. I'll leave the timestamps in the description for you below for easy viewing. And then towards the end, I'll talk about my wishes for the No Man's Sky future in 2021. But before we get started, I want to hear from you. I want to read your thoughts about the No Man's Sky Origins update in the comments section below. Please jump down and type your thoughts. And of course, your thoughts and wishes for the future for this game in 2021 as well, if you're a fan. So without wasting any more of your time, let's just go ahead and jump right into this. Let's talk about the pros. First things first, they absolutely went and did it. The madmen, the mad people of Hello Games have actually accomplished the variety that a lot of people in the No Man's Sky community have been begging for. If you've been around since the beginning, or if you've sort of dabbled with No Man's Sky over the last 4 years here or there, or you were here for launch, you know that it doesn't take too long of playtime for No Man's Sky players to experience pretty much the same thing over and over again. For all of the infinity that No Man's Sky touts, some of the sites can get a little old pretty fast. And honestly, this was just going to be inevitable. The Origins update is primarily really what that purpose is. Hello Games went and really just mixed everything up in this game. It's just wild what they actually did to this. I know that I have been a critic of No Man's Sky, especially over the last couple of years, for its lack of engagement, its lack of depth, its lack of gameplay mechanics in a sort of emergent world that they're trying to build. And my main criticism is that the game sort of largely lacked the carrot at the end of the stick. The Origins update in the way of variety has definitely added that to a degree. It's taken one of the core aspects of the game that No Man's Sky has really always tried to tout and really fleshes it out pretty deeply. Instead of just taking everything that was already sort of in the game and just mixing it up a little bit to try to give some perceived idea of variety, they went and actually put in the work to build in just a large amount of assets to inject into the game to give the feeling of variety in all of these worlds. They built new flora, they built new fauna, they injected new behaviors into the AI to make things a little more believable and slightly more wondrous. And overall, they really went out of their way to just sort of add on to the house versus just giving it a new coat of paint. It's hard to say how long and how much effort they actually put into this, but it definitely shows. If you would have said that they didn't put that much effort into this, you would have fooled me. But to go with that variety, it's not just the tons of new assets that they injected into the game, but it's also what they did to the worlds themselves. One of my criticisms of the game over the last year has been that Hello Games is almost seemingly deliberately holding this game back and not allowing it to reach its true potential. More appropriately, I'm talking about the fact that things just sort of seem kind of normalish. One of my biggest praises of No Man's Sky over the years is that its terrain generation tech is second to none. But over those years, they've just sort of let that go, and they haven't really done much with it. So with all of these new worlds that they just sort of tossed into these galaxies, they included more dramatic landscapes. And I'm not just sort of treating the word dramatic very loosely. When I say dramatic, I mean dramatic. When introducing variety into the game over the years, I just sort of cringed in like Reddit communities and things like that when they're calling for let's have volcanoes and tornadoes and stuff like that. Well, it's almost as if Hello Games were just reading these message boards and saying, okay, fine, let's do it. And then when you get to the dramatic landscapes, I mean, we're talking gigantic mountains, super deep valley, deeper ocean. I mean, to give you an example, there are mountains that are so tall, I've encountered mountains that are tall enough that it took about at least 2 minutes to just fall from. I mean, you're just falling endlessly. And when you're doing this, you just can't help but think, why was this necessary? And why do I love this so much? Something sorely missing from No Man's Sky over the last 4 years is the ability to have Hello Games just go incredibly stupid with its design. This kind of procedural generation tech, and then just sort of the design philosophy that they were originally going for with like sci-fi book covers and the general wonder of exploration, they actually went and did it. This is really going to change things for the gameplay dynamic as well in some of your more challenging modes like survival and permadeath. Some of these worlds with the more dramatic landscapes could really have you really just die if you take the wrong step and you're not really thinking about your footing. Steep cliffs, long drops, worlds that are just so much more difficult to navigate. I really appreciate this. But when adding these new worlds, a benefit of this is that they didn't want to upset the base building folks, the popular base building group of No Man's Sky. So I imagine they must have been talking about the possibility of resetting the universes completely at some point to facilitate this new procedural generation method. But instead of going with an all-out reset, they decided to work around that idea and just add more planets to the galaxy. Now, this didn't mean that the existing planets that were already there and also had bases didn't get attention of their own. I have quite a few planets that have bases on them that had aesthetic updates. One of my main planets with a base had just a really clean and beautiful red aesthetic, and after the update, it made it just this bleak hellscape. So to a degree, there was kind of a reset, but really for the terrain, they left that as is. And the existing planets got a lot of the update benefits that most of the other newer planets got. Better lighting, better rendering, and all of the other little bells and whistles the update came with. Honestly, I'm still pretty blown away that they actually went with this variety update push that this community had for so long that it seemed like they were just sort of ignoring for a while. But with it being the marquee feature of the update, I'm really kind of glad that they did. And I've sort of been anti-variety for a while to a degree because I've always believed that just injecting a little bit of variety into the game wasn't going to do anything for the gameplay idea that I've wanted so much for No Man's Sky for so long. And honestly, I'm kind of eating my words. Another pro to the Origins update is over the last year, I've been begging them to pay more attention to structures and add more structures to the game. And of course, Desolation did a very good job of adding the derelict freighters, a mechanic that I absolutely adore. But now Hello Games are paying better attention with building on planet surfaces. Now, I think it's just one type of new building so far, which maybe they could have gone a little bit deeper on. But these archive buildings are just wonderful and beautiful to look at. Like these hulking structures, they may not serve too huge of a purpose yet, but with these archives now present, I'm wondering why they're even bothering to keep planet-side trade stations, because they're really kind of embarrassing now. Like they're small, they serve almost no purpose, so it's just kind of a joke in my mind that they're still there. Really, they should just delete them out and just use these archive buildings because they have shops, they have just way more that you can do at them. They're more visually pleasing, and I still can't shake the sense of surprise and awe if I'm just sort of wandering on a planet and I just happen to wander upon one. They're pretty beautiful, and I really want them to keep going with this idea. I know it's only one type of building that can have some different and varying aesthetic to it, but it only serves just one purpose. You know, I guess that's fine for just one update, but I really, really hope they continue to add more buildings and more structures to No Man's Sky because I'm already super impressed by this. Now, of course, while variety and the better terrain generations and the loads of new assets, those are all really good. But aside from that, I don't think, and this must have been unintended for Hello Games, but really, I think the talk of the update and the most buzz in the community didn't so much just come from the variety aspect itself, but the storms mechanic that they improved in the Origins update, I'm just absolutely blown away by. When I was reading the patch notes for this portion of the update, I'm thinking to myself, they're just going to do the bare minimum. What could they possibly do to improve storms? But after encountering my first few storms, I gotta say, Hello Games knocked it out of the park with this. I recall my very first storm. I'm flying into the atmosphere of a planet, and I'm flying between the ground and the clouds, and it's just this dark red storm, and it's really windy, and you can barely see anything other than the horizon, and it's just spraying lightning everywhere. It is one of the most impressive scenes that I think I've seen in this game. Nothing has blown my hair back as much as that moment. That's probably one of my favorite moments in this game. And now, just when, years ago when you hear storm incoming, you just kind of rolled your eyes and you were like, okay, I'll get to shelter, or I'll just get in my ship, or I'll just go somewhere else. But now with these new storms and just the new ways that the game handles them now, like, it's the complete opposite effect. I want to stay. I want to see what happens. I want to see, is there a lightning storm? Is there going to be volcanic eruption? I've yet to encounter a tornado, but when am I going to see one of these? Like, when is this going to get bad? And I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to watch it. Standing on a really tall mountain and just watching a storm occur, the clouds just raining lightning on the horizon, it really is. It's wondrous to behold in these moments. I still think it's kind of unfortunate that storms take place on a planet-wide scale. That just seems kind of unrealistic and annoying to me. Like, I would love to be able to just see storms in places on planets and just maybe a storm rolling in from the horizon. But you know what? This will do for me. Like, I'm not even complaining at this point. Just watching, when your suit tells you that a storm is on the way and you look up into the sky and you begin to see the sky thicken up with clouds in real time. I gotta say, bravo, Hello Games. Like, I'm still mind blown by how good these storms are. But speaking of clouds, for the first couple of years, clouds in No Man's Sky were just not really a thing. It wasn't until the next update that they actually did some better cloud rendering tech for the game. And it was definitely much better than what it was for the first couple of years. But now you see thick and, just a full body cloud moving in the sky. It was definitely more preferable than just these sort of what look like PNG images floating through the sky. Like, it just wasn't very impressive in the first couple of years. Now they outdid themselves. Like, I don't know that anybody else in the community other than the annoying cloud guy in Sean's Twitter mentions were really asking for this, but they just went and did it anyway. Clouds are thick, they have volume, they bring down God rays depending on which platform you're playing on, and just flying above the clouds in the planetary atmospheres is just beautiful. Like, they didn't need to do this, but they did it, and it's impressive. Adding things like these, they really went out of their way to bring a sense of place, bring a sense of presence, believability, and immersion to these planets, something that they've never really had before. So that's the variety aspect. They added a ton of assets. They did well to cater to those who had bases and didn't want those things destroyed through a reset. They added buildings. The storms and the clouds are absolutely beautiful. But one thing that has always plagued No Man's Sky on pretty much all of their updates, but especially their yearly anniversary update. Atlas Rises, Next, and Beyond, all three of those updates came with a gigantic myriad of bugs. I remember most clearly Next and Beyond particularly. Next, it took them about 3 weeks for them to get the game right for me, where all of the new features that they added were actually workable and usable for me. And you know what? That's fine. If I can expect that and know what I need to do as a player, but just be patient while a team of just a couple of dozen people at the most are working to crush those bugs, I can have a little bit of patience. Beyond, however, was definitely different. The game was mostly broken for me for 6 months, and it took until the Living Ship update for them to get terrain generation right, where I could actually land and play the game without worrying about falling through the terrain and dying on my survival save. So far, after a few days of playing the Origins update, I'm happy to report that this is not a thing at all. Like, I'm not seeing any reports of major bugs. They're still releasing patches into the experimental. I think there's been 2 or 3 of these updates so far. Hot fixes that are rolling out for just various little issues, none of which I remember to date that were that significant, and just the usual fixings of things. For the first time in 4 years, No Man's Sky has had a major update that has launched relatively bug-free. The only bug that I have encountered so far was that a planet disappeared right in front of me, and I could see 2 of these sort of atmospheric halos around it. And I think there was one other smaller occurrence of that, but the planet just popped right back in front of me anyway as soon as I moved forward a little bit. It was a non-issue, but I've experienced 0 game-breaking bugs, 0 things that are exploitative so far, and generally I love that I don't have to spend the next couple of weeks sitting and being patient waiting for that patch note that comes by relieving the issue that I have. So they definitely did. They made gigantic changes with this update to terrain generation, adding a lot of brand new assets to the game, adding billions of new planets. I have seen some bugs where there's like 2 planets that have like collided and they're stuck together. So perhaps maybe it wasn't the best idea to just inject a bunch of billions of planets into the game. So they might have to go in and patch those a little bit. But I'm impressed that they barely have any new bugs in this update. That's phenomenal. And even worse, the older updates, they would be so buggy that they would break old bugs that they had already fixed just with the new update. And I'm not seeing that here. And just hats off to Hello Games for such a great job on such a great launch of this update. And then I also want to give them hats off too. This is definitely a pro to this update, that working conditions in 2020 are so not optimal for the type of team that Hello Games is. And, with a global crisis happening and people more divided than ever, whether it be politically or having to stay away from each other to keep from getting sick and things like that, they managed to pull this update off and pull it off this expertly, even knowing that everybody's working from home and the sort of team dynamic has had to change so much. And really hats off to any developer that in these harsh times can navigate through that and still do an amazing job. So now I want to get to the areas of opportunity for the Origins update. I know I'm putting up a review less than a week after the actual update has come out. And with all the time that I've actually put into this update, I really worry that this is just a courting period that might wear off. Right now, I'm excited it's something new. I'm so happy to jump between planet to planet to just see what's new and what they've done with all of the new assets and all of the new variety. But I'm a little concerned that this is going to eventually run me out of steam. And the worst part about it is I can't really fully tell you if that's what's going to happen or not, but I suspect that it will. Now, to Hello Games' credit, with their new update structure and this sort of how they've been doing things through 2020, generally every 2 to 3 months, they're coming out with another pretty significant update to the game to continue to add to the scope and add to the promise of No Man's Sky. So I'm interested to see how that goes, knowing that, sure, they added some new variety and new assets and things like that, but just how far is that going to take me, knowing that no real new game mechanics or engagement methods other than this sort of renewed drive to go planet hopping just to see the new site. I really worry about the depth being affected by that still, knowing that they didn't really do much in that department. Now, I know in the pros section, I praised Hello Games for a workaround for not doing a reset. But I've always gone on record, if you follow me on Twitter at the LZ Tweets, I've been a large proponent of a galactic reset. As a matter of fact, I've been sort of begging them to do it since Before Beyond. My angle has always been, if you are doing something significant enough to the game to warrant a reset, then please reset it. And I know not always, people don't always agree with me on that one. And I know I'm about to catch some dislikes for that. That's fair. But after playing the Origins update, I noticed that you can definitely tell the difference between a planet that was existing versus a new one. And of course, that's probably by design, but you can still see that the just sort of basic generation of the terrain is just still ever present. And I would have really loved them to do the reset just so that every planet can get that full-on love that the other new additional planets that they added. I would love for all of those planets to be full of that type of variety, full of that type of dramatic landscape. And in a way, I feel like it's kind of a disservice to the planets that existed to the game. Now, I know majorly they don't want to disturb your bases, and hindsight for adding base building to the game has been a mixed bag for me. I'm not a base builder. I mean, I do have them. I don't utilize them that much. I'm more of a freighter base kind of guy because I like to have a place to just dump all of my extra assets and items and things like that. But I really wonder if a reset would have been better for this, just to make sure that the full experience for all of these planets, all of the 18 quintillion plus extra billions, would have gotten that same attention. Now, that's not to say that those planets that are existing didn't get a fresh coat of paint, because they exactly did. I mean, most of our planets that have bases on them have somehow aesthetically changed. So I really got to ask, was it really worth it to not do a full reset? And how many of your bases that you had now is on some hellscape, undesirable planet that sort of negates the reason why you put the base there in the first place? I know at least half of my bases are now on planets that are either just meh or just super problematic that I don't want to be on it. Certainly let me know in the comment section what your feelings on that one, but I think I would have preferred a reset. And then lastly, for the cons, I think with Origins, and I know I might be nitpicking here and I might be sounding a little bit entitled, fair enough, but I still think there is some things that have been unresolved that either they haven't been able to get to yet, or frankly, I just don't like the way they've left them. And some features are still left unfulfilling in No Man's Sky, right? So they have gone in and just added a ton of depth and, a ton of love to most of No Man's Sky at this point. But to me, things like traveling to the center of the galaxy, which was one of the major aspects of the game at launch, it never got attention. It never got a meaningful draw to go and do it. In 4 years, I have yet to travel to the center of a galaxy, just because I know that it just feels worthless to do so. I don't want to travel to a new galaxy. I want something meaningful and impactful to happen when I get there, and sadly, that still has not been addressed so far as I know. So to me, that leaves just pretty much no reason to travel anywhere other than aimlessly, or to maybe travel to communities that people have built in the game. And that's really something that I wish that they would have catered to a little bit more over the years, and Origins would have definitely been a perfect opportunity to revisit that, to say, okay, you know what, here's some various regions that you should go to for these reasons. And the original aspect that they pitched, that the closer to the center you get, the weirder and the more strange things get, that was super appealing to me. And it was one of the things that when the game shipped, and then over the last 4 years, I just wish that this is something that would have come to fruition for me. And I miss that aspect, to be able to want to travel somewhere meaningful in these massive galaxies. And so far, they haven't done anything with that. And over the course of 2020, they added these sort of space curiosities, and really the only one they've given attention to so far is the derelict freighters, which actually happened to be my most favorite update of the year, aside from how much I love Origin. But all of these little curiosities that you can happen upon as you're sort of pulse driving through these star systems, they're still just kind of empty and meaningless. And this would have been a really perfect opportunity to give them some more polish and give them some more meaning and purpose. But overall, I think the No Man's Sky Origins update is a massive win. Out of all of the updates besides Next, I think Origins is the most amount of tangible love that I've can feel that Hello Games has given No Man's Sky before. If there were ever a passion project for No Man's Sky that Hello Games have done for this game so far, Origins is definitely that. Now, I know there were a lot of legitimate concerns from just sort of regular players who weren't so much the No Man's Sky base that we have, that you and I are part of, if you're probably watching this video. Folks saying, well, I just see the same things, or it's super repetitive, etc., etc. I really think that that's just not a talking point anymore. They have squashed that talking point. That is no longer a problem. Just from my experience with the update so far, the variety update added a certain amount of depth that I have yet to being able to figure out or grasp just how deep it is yet, and maybe that's a really good thing. So for 2021, I'm really still hoping that they continue to support No Man's Sky. I know that Hello Games is working on some new bombastic giant project, but they said that Origins was a sort of foundation for the future ahead. I hope to see a really significant next-gen update, and I really hope to see them continue to cater to updates like Synthesis and Desolation. Those were some of my favorite updates because they gave you depth, gameplay mechanics, things to do in this excellent universe that is No Man's Sky. I'd like to see a shipbuilding mechanic. I'd like to see more expansion on the buildings that they're beginning to add to the game. Desolation's sort of looter shooter dungeon aspect, I would like to see them do something like that on planets as well. You may not have fallen for this idea that No Man's Sky was somehow infinite or whatever maybe 4 years ago. And in hindsight, since about 4 years ago when the team said, we don't know what's out there, now it just was kind of bullshit. With Origins, they've really put their money where their mouth is, and they've executed on that promise very expertly. Ladies and gentlemen, if this has been educational to your No Man's Sky experience, do pop a like on the video and subscribe to the LZ for more No Man's Sky and other stuff coverage with next gen on the horizon. Happy to put out more reviews and opinion content about my feelings on the video game industry, but thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.